Hello, my name is Erica, and this is the first time that I'm filming an explainer video for one of my weekly parsha prana class flows, where I take the Torah portion of the week and I kind of make an interpretive yoga dance out of it. So I just filmed the flow, and that'll be going up on the blog, and this video as well, explaining the spiritual and anatomical, like the actual physical side of the yoga class breakdown. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about like my takeaway from the parsha this week. And excuse me, I'm going to read from my laptop, but I assure you they are 100% my words and thoughts. So my Vayishlach takeaway. So just a quick summary. After 20 years, Jacob plans to return home to his vengeful brother Esau, who never ceased plotting to kill him. Jacob prepares for war, but still prays for reconciliation and attempts to appease Esau by sending him a large gift. Along the way, Jacob vanquishes a supernal creature, but dislocates his hip in the process. This angel changed Jacob's name to Israel, which means straightness pertaining to like with God, instead of Jacob, which stems from the word meaning crookedness. It's significant to point out that the Torah interpreters say that this angel embodied the spirit of Esau, his brother. And if there's one thing we know about Esau, is that he hates his brother Jacob. I mean, for 20 years, he was just plotting to kill him. So in an unexpected turn of events, Esau runs to embrace and kiss Jacob upon reunion. Deeper research shows that this wasn't a normal kiss. Esau was either trying to kill Jacob by biting his throat, or Esau kissed Jacob with all his heart, which would just be abnormal in itself because he hates Jacob. So either way, we're wondering, what's the purpose of Esau's pure hatred? Like, why does he exist? Like, if that's what he represents, it's just pure hatred. If one way or the other, he's just hating his brother. And why would Esau be the one to embody the angel, which bestows Jacob's new heightened identity, if he's just hatred? So we can answer these questions by taking a closer look at the purpose of hatred, evil, and darkness in our world in general. So as the title of this week's blog post and theme of the class, it's evil exists to be exploited by goodness. So if you take a look at the difference between cruelty and kindness, it's obvious that evil is more powerful than good. So evil exists to be exploited by goodness. Just take a look at these supporting thoughts. Darkness exists so that it should be transformed into light, resulting in a luminance infinitely greater than light itself could ever yield. Darkness is dark. You can be in a dark room, and all it takes is like a tiny like tea light or an LED for you to kind of get a feel of what's going on in this dark room. The darkness was always going to be dark, you know, whatever, but the small light, like a small LED in a room like this, doesn't make much of a difference, but in the darkness makes like a huge difference. So we exploit the darkness with light. And then the second is kindness isn't exactly unleashed with the same type of force and vigor as an act of cruelty. Like when someone does something specifically cruel, they really want to be cruel, they're really like putting their soul into it. People will like fester bad feelings and just release cruelty way more intensely than you do something kind. You don't go to the soup kitchen or go volunteer and be like, I'm gonna be so kind today. It's just not like that. You know, you feel good and you share that. So darkness, evil, cruelty, much more powerful than goodness and kindness. So Esau is eternally furious with Jacob because he knows deep down that in his soul, that his hatred isn't his own. He was implanted into this world solely to fuel his brother's bringing of light. Jacob was once crooked when he duped his father and for Esau's blessings in last week's parsha. But through the battle and contrast with Esau's darkness, Jacob brings light and straightness with God, and that's more potent than it could have been if he was just kind in the first place. It'd just be like, oh, Jacob, wise, kind guy, cool. But it's like he had this turnaround. He had to use his brother's hatred as a life challenge and exploit that evil to become even more lifted, to have this new identity that he has and a new name. So the lesson we learn here is that any difficulties in our world should be exploited for its intensity to produce a more potent version of goodness that could not have been produced without challenge. So that's kind of the spiritual side of it. And then I have a breakdown of the actual sequence of the class, like why I made the class sequence the way it is. So we always start with the reset. That's a whole other story, but it's always like a bridge pose, some abdominal work, and getting into like quadruped, dolphin, and challenging our core, cultivating our breath. So that's really how I like to start every single class. But the movements in the reset, I put an emphasis on the hip flexion. So like the abdominals, when you have like one leg bent and one leg straight up, that's like you're flexing at, you can't see where I'm pointing, but you're flexing at this hip. And throughout the reset, I'm constantly cueing, you know, to activate the glutes so we can have a neutral pelvis. You know, you keep these engaged and you stretch out so that you're not sitting like this. So we focus on the hip flexion there. And it's to prepare us for this journey ahead. I mean, the journey ahead of what Jacob is going through and also the class itself. So we begin with Sun 1, and that's when we're in the low lunge. I'm like doing this on my couch. Wrong leg, so you can see. So when you keep the glute activated, the hip open, you really feel a great stretch all the way down there, and you're keeping the neutral pelvis, the abdominals engaged, the glutes engaged. You're using your muscles to keep the bones in place. Yeah. So just hips, 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 glutes, glutes, glutes. And then we move into Sun A, where a Sun Salutation A, it's pretty typical, but while we're in plank in the middle of the vinyasa, I have the feet tapping out to the side, stressing the core, working the abdominals, and testing the waters. This kind of represents the angel emissaries that Jacob sent to check on his brother. Like, oh, how's he doing for the past 20 years? Oh, still trying to kill me? Okay. But it's kind of just tapping out to the side, testing the waters. And then we move into Sun Salutation B, where we have the prayer twist, because Jacob prays that there will be a good reconciliation between the two. And also we just come up into a one-legged mountain from the warrior. So it's like he's praying, but he's also preparing for war. We're warming up the hips here as well. And then we move into the main flow. So we include some of the movements that I consider essential for like a true lit practice. So LYT, Laura's yoga technique, that's my favorite style of yoga that I'm certified to teach. And I include some of these like essential movements at the start of the practice to represent like the start of Jacob's journey, his dedication to his family. And then we have a series of hip-focused movements. Oh wait, actually first let me talk about the pyramid and standing split. So I was cueing, keeping like a lift in the core as we were like walking forward in the sun salutations. And then when you're in pyramid, this is like not a good angle, but when you're in pyramid, it's like you want to keep your hips square with the body, and you want to keep your pelvis neutral even though you're bending. Do that with strong abdominals, core, and proper hip flexion. So yeah, when you move from standing split to pyramid, it's like you're putting one leg up, down. You could have included the hops in there if you wanted. Yeah. So, but later then we have a series of hip focused movements close to the ground, and this is to represent the like rolling and wrestling with the angel all night, to focus on that hip injury that Jacob suffers. And lastly, we stand, coil, and twist to represent the excitement of the reunion between the two brothers. And overall, we complete like one side of the flow towards the back of the mat. Like when we're done, we face the back, and then when we do the other side, it brings us back to the front. And this is just supposed to represent Jacob's new identity, like his change. And then just as the parsha doesn't end with that story, I mean, there's some details about Esau's family, and Jacob's wife dies, Rebecca, and he goes to find his father. His mother had already died. He buries his father. All this stuff happens. So there's a lot. Every parsha packs a lot. I kind of just have to focus on a little piece of it, or else it'll just be too crazy. But the parsha doesn't end there. So we do a little bit of yin also, especially with that, all the movements, you know, you're breathing hard. I was, at least. And you just need to come down before you get into Shavasana. So we do a little bit of pigeon and that arm thing. I don't even know what it's called, but it's like a stretch. You roll over your arm. A heart opener, because the brothers have opened their hearts. Yeah. So that's the explanation. That's honestly like a quick explanation. Like I could really get into all the muscles and bones and stretches and strength and blah, 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 blah. But I'm just starting out. This is the first explainer video I've done. So we're gonna leave it at that. That's the spiritual and physical explanation for this class. All right, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you. If you're following, I mean, appreciate you in general, but if you're following along with this blog, it's been a really awesome journey for me to motivate myself to make weekly classes, to get back into teaching, especially months after coronavirus kind of shut down all the gyms and where I was teaching. And I miss teaching, so yeah, I kind of felt like I was losing my teacher voice, and it's coming back virtually, even though I'm not doing any live classes. But thank you, appreciate you, and Shabbat Shalom.